I'm Dr. Rochelle, and this is...
I'm Dr. Rasheeta.
So we are here at the Hope Health Communication YouTube channel, where we're going to share messages about how to parent with hope. So Rasheeta, what's the hope?
So the hope is that our children, particularly minoritized children, have an opportunity to be expressive, but in safe spaces. So really wanting to talk about like our own experiences and bringing other people into the space to talk about theirs, because obviously we work in the academic setting. You know, we're speaking about our own experiences. We're not representing our individual institutions.
Right.
But we felt like it was important that this topic get out there in the public sphere. And also, we want to hear from you all. Like, what are the things that you're dealing with, so that we can create a hopeful environment for our children?
Yes. Thank you. That sounds so amazing, because I feel like kids of today are bombarded with information and so much, so fast, all the time. They're overstimulated, but they have a lot of ideas and questions, and they come to us with it. And I don't know about you, but a lot of times I feel out of depth. And I think my parents, they were probably nervous about a couple of conversations, right? Don't talk about sex, don't talk about something else. But I feel like with us, there's so much that our kids want to talk about. And so we don't want to share messages with them that feel like doom and gloom.
Right.
Even though there is so much of that online, and even, you know, probably when they talk with each other. So I think, you know, while we're sharing, you know, evidence-informed messages, like based on research and sort of, you know, our professional settings, we want it to be everyday conversations that they can have with their own kids, and maybe even other parents like them. And I will say I will be mostly speaking as a Black mom.
Yes, me
and
too. Me too.
So, as a mom of 3, 2 boys and a girl, and just like how much I've learned just by being a mother to them, and how much I've grown, but also how much I still feel like I need to workshop.
Right. We're not perfect.
No,
there's no perfect parenting. I think a lot of us come into it with, like, you know, our own kind of the parenting that we receive, like elements of that, building that into what we're trying to do as parents, but then also our peer group of parenting
I'm a millennial
partners. You know,
I'm a millennial parent, and that means a lot of different things. You know, I was watching one Instagram post yesterday that said millennial parents are not good with follow through. So they'll threaten their child, say, you know, I'm gonna take away that phone because you didn't do this, right? Once I saw that, I started cracking up. I was like, this is me. And then he was saying, you know, his parents follow through was
you knew it was coming, right? Girl, listen, I used to lock so my dad would be like, okay, Rasheeta, you know, like, I'm like, why are you telling me I'm going to get something when I get home? Because, like, I'm so nervous about it. So I would go in the bathroom and so he was patient. He was like, you still get whatever you got coming. Whether you come out in an hour or 2 minutes,
right? Watch a whole football game. And so, in many ways, like, you used to prepare, like, whether it was a spanking or it was, you know, verbal discipline or whatever.
Exactly.
But now, like, we'll forget or we'll be tired and it's like, you know what, I'll deal with you in the morning.
Exactly.
And I feel like my kids know that.
Mine too.
And they're really strategic and smart about it. So, like, they'll be like, you know, mommy probably forgot. Or they'll try to distract me. And I'm like, you know what? No, I need to follow through, right? And so if I'm taking away your phone because of a consequence, you know, in relation to maybe like my oldest just got a phone. He's just turned 15, 9th grader. So the phone is now, I find, okay, it's appropriate for him to have a phone. But I was very reluctant to give him his own device. I tell them that all the devices belong to me anyway. But so now that has become a part of, you know, the conversation when it comes to the consequence of if you don't do something you're supposed to do, then you're probably going to lose privilege of having your phone.
Absolutely.
But sometimes I'll forget.
Oh,
Right? And so, like, life happens. Or I might need him to have his phone because maybe he's going out.
True.
Right? There's always that kind of
works.
thing. But it's that same phone where I find, as much as I put the safeguards on for social media use, timing, etc., there's all these wonderful apps where parents can track, you know, what is their children are exposed to.
Controls.
Even with all of that,
Yeah.
They are still exposed to much more than they can handle and much more than we can even respond to.
Yeah, so even the kid-friendly versions may not necessarily be that. And then, so I had a cousin come stay with me this summer, and she was kind of on a little punishment from her devices, from her mom, but I was a little lenient. But I found out you can do messages and then like have them disappear. Yes. So they have all kinds of tools to really lure kids into doing things that they aren't supposed to. And parents, it's just some things you will not be able to control or regulate.
That's it.
So it's just that teaching them, like, hey, like, even if you're hiding it from me and I don't ever find out, like, how is this going to help you to be a better person in the end? Like, is it going to really be detrimental to you? Because that's what I'm trying to prevent. Like, it's not, I'm just not the fun police, right? It's really trying to make sure you don't get into something that could potentially be life-threatening or harmful, because you have predators online, you have people really trying to do you harm, and I'm trying to prevent that.
Yes, absolutely. So we're going to talk about a lot of difficult topics that parents generally shy away from. And we have tools, we have information, we have research. All of that will help us to kind of craft some of these messages together. And we'll share them with you, and you all tell us like what's working and what's not working.
We will be looking at the chat, like comments. Like, we really want this to be a global conversation. Like, we want this
lots of engagement.
We're not shy. We don't profess to know.
I'm a little shy, but
I guess I am a little bit. But when I get on camera, I turn into maybe not so shy.
Right. That's a good thing. I think I'm the opposite. In real life, when I'm with my people, I'm definitely outgoing, but online, I'm probably a lot more reserved. But I think it's important to come out of that sort of space and really just, you know, again, work together and hear what other parents are doing. And this is, you know, a big part of my research, right? Like I focus on Black families and families of color, the messaging around health issues, and particularly the stigmatized issues, right? Sexual health, mental health. But a lot of health issues are so stigmatized we don't even realize it. And I don't know about how you grew up, but I grew up in I'm a first generation Jamaican American, and so both of my parents are Jamaican. And I think our culture, I don't know in comparison to other cultures really, but I would say they don't want to speak about a lot. And especially things that they may feel is taboo. But there's a lot around privacy. Like, everything is private.
Everything's private. Don't let people know what's going on in your house.
Nothing. Like, exactly. What goes on here stays here. And I mean, I guess there's a appropriateness to that. But I think what we're seeing too in some of the research is that there is a point where that can become harmful.
Absolutely.
And so I think we want to share with parents where it's like, you may not be aware, it's definitely not your intent, but there are times when sort of institutionalizing this privacy rule, can actually lead to concealing harmful experiences where children don't share things that we want them to share. And so I think we'll talk a little bit about that, you know, during this season, I guess. Are we calling it that?
Definitely. I think that this will certainly evolve over time as things change. We hope to also encompass like current events, and so I think I definitely want to touch on like you as a professional, like your professional expertise, and as well as mine, and then like you said, really kind of merge that world where we do have levels of professional elements to contribute.
Yes.
But we want this to be, conversational
Yes.
too. Like we are down to earth and we're talking
Yeah.
as parents too. So
Yeah.
like we have intersecting elements to who we are
Yes.
as people
Yes.
in the professional side, the personal side.
Yes.
So.
Yes.
I'm just gonna ask you to give
Okay.
a little tea about that. And you mentioned being Jamaican. I got
Mm-hmm.
to plug that I am from the South,
Yes.
from a little rural town in Florida. So I wish we kind of knew a little bit more about like our roots.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously I'm of African descent. And I know my grandmother did have like this American Indian-esque element,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know a whole lot about that. So maybe like we might do like one of those genealogy tests on here. We can find out online.
Yeah, I'm
what
sure
my
it'll be all
breakdown
kinds of
is.
stuff. Yeah.
So yeah, maybe that's something we'll do together.
And I think it's important to have some idea with my children because my husband is Zimbabwean, and so we're both Black, but it's a multicultural, multi-ethnic family, and so to give my children a sense of who they are in terms of their racial and ethnic background, I've gone into some of that. I know my older brother did like a swab and found out a whole bunch of stuff. But yeah, I think that's important. And for me, what I love even more than the sort of genealogy of it is the stories.
Yeah.
And I used to ask my grandfather a lot about stories of childhood, and he was so forthcoming, right? Because a lot of I spoke about the sort of privacy, element to a lot of families in our culture, but my grandfather wasn't like that. Like he really shared quite a bit about his youth and leaving home at a young age, having to start over, and a lot of things that has always stayed with me that I continue to share with my kids.
Yeah.
And my dad definitely is much more open and talks to my children about all of his childhood excursions and very adventurous life. and I think my mom is really open about tough things, which I didn't realize wasn't the norm until I spoke to other moms of color. Yeah. And they were like, oh, their mother never shared certain things with them. But my mom has shared a lot of really important information about her health, about my grandmother's life, her mom, things that have really shaped how I am open about my own health journey. Oh, nice. Right? And so like even certain traumatic experiences of like having a baby be premature, having, severe preeclampsia as a lot of Black women. Like some of those things, I'm not ashamed or afraid to share them. And I think it's because of the kind of culture she raised us in. Good. To say like, it's important to share this so that other people can learn from so it's kind of in that spirit where some of these topics are really difficult, but I think the hope comes from sharing, right? And learning that you're not the only one on that journey, that there is a community out there to support you. And so I think we're trying to create that. Yeah. It's like create a virtual community for parents who are navigating, talking to their children about really tricky topics that may come up on social media, and they're like, oh goodness, right? But we need to be there for our kids, and we have to be open and safe spaces, as you said, for them to come to us. Yeah, we can't shy away from it. It's in our face, and if we do, someone else will fill that void, right? They're going to get the information right or wrong and different. We know that there are issues with misinformation, disinformation. So we know that, most parents want the best for their children. Right. They want to ensure that they can give them the best information and resources that they can. And so if we don't talk to our own children, then they tend to get that information from places that might not be the best source. Yeah, and that we can't really sort of edit. Like it's just available.
Right.
Before, I think we grew up where our parents were just worried about us hearing it from somebody on the playground,
right,
or watching an inappropriate show on TV. And I mean, we didn't have that many TVs in the house, right? And dial-up started when I was in high school.
Me too.
So like I remember when the internet started, and so, but now, I mean, everything, right? It would take forever.
Yes.
Oh goodness, we're dating ourselves. But but just the difference between 20 years ago and now, it's so different. And I don't know if there's enough parenting books or guides that really
navigate it.
I don't, because people always say, "Oh, nobody writes a book about parenting." Well, there's several thousand books about parenting.
Yeah, there are.
But it's like, do these books incorporate the intersections? You mentioned that earlier, of like raising Black children who are digital natives.
That's it.
Right? And so that intersection in particular, what does it mean to give the Black boy talk in the age of information?
Yeah, I mean, that just, when you said that, a light bulb went off. I don't know that. So there are a lot of parenting books, but I don't know if anyone's really done a whole lot of information. I mean, I'm sure it's things out there, but I don't know that has been tapped into as much. Yeah. So it's a great question, and who knows, that might be the book that, you write, we write. You guys can help us write it, because, I mean, we're living it now.
Yeah, we're living it. Yeah.
It's crazy because I think as information and other things evolve, so does parenting.
Absolutely.
And you have to adapt accordingly.
I love that you said that. Parenting evolves, and I think a lot of times we are trying to either not do what our parents did or do exactly what our parents did, because it's so much like risk. You know what I mean? Like, you don't know if any of this is going to work. But I think if you stay in the space of it's evolving and you're open to learning new things, and as I was sharing with you before we started, was just I think of my parenting as trying to do the best with the information I have today.
Yes.
Now the challenge is there's so much information.
What do you apply?
What do you apply? Right? Is it soft? What are the terminologies now? Like, there's just so many different kinds of parenting, and are they going to actually work? Are we really throwing away everything that our parents did? Maybe we should, think about things that were beneficial and not throw the whole, So, but again, we're also dealing with information overload, right? So I think what we want to try to do too is, because we're both avid readers and we're researchers by profession, that we will kind of bring some of that information in a condensed, relatable format, so that we can, again, like, work through some of these ideas and say, well, let's think about what's some hopeful tips for the week kind of thing.
I love that.
But yeah, we're kind of evolving even now.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that, so just so you know, we will be doing some lives.
Yes.
But we don't come from the same cities. We don't live in the same area. And so it was like great for us to be able to do it this time. But I live in Atlanta.
And I'm in Maryland. So, which is really two great places for raising Black children. The sort of professional and supportive structure of these regions. I haven't seen it anywhere else in the U.S. And so the diversity of Blackness is real, right? Absolutely. We're not a monolith. And I think these two particular areas, DMV, Atlanta, offers so much to families like ours.
It demonstrates Black excellence to our children.
And also Black challenges.
And challenges,
you just a stone throw away. And that's like the sort of, Black reality, right? I think the reality of being Black in America is complex.
It is.
And while we have been able very hopeful. So while we have been able to attain certain things, and we're encouraging our children to do the same, the messages and the images that they see about themselves in mass media and even on social media are still predominantly negative. And
Right.
so again, one of our aims is to provide the hope, the hopeful narratives that can sort of combat and provide alternatives to what they see all the time.
Yeah, they get overwhelmed with. I mean, I wanted to also go back to asking you a little bit more about like what your formal training is.
Okay.
And then I'll say what mine
Sure.
is. So,
So I am a health communication researcher. So I have a PhD in communication, specializing in health communication. And I research public health issues through the lens of communication, right? So how can we develop health promotion messages, interventions to support social and behavioral change? And I'm specifically focused on Black and families of color. And that's such a huge and diverse population because, as we've said, coming from immigrant families, from the South, those elements of region and immigration, all of that adds complexity to what it means to be Black.
Absolutely.
And so I really enjoy the research that I do because I get to talk to people all the time. So I'm predominantly qualitative researcher. So interviews and focus groups and giving depth to the numbers that we see all the time, right? Because we're going to talk about some stats, but we have the qualitative information too, the stories and the narratives of people who are living these things every day.
Absolutely.
That I think really help us to understand how families are navigating difficult health issues.
I mean, boy, you said a mouthful.
Yes.
Which, let me tell you, is amazing. I think the reason why we met and we're so synergistic in the way that we talk is because a lot of our passion lies in very similar spaces. So I have a PhD in nursing. I'm also a family nurse practitioner. So I hear the stories from kind of a clinician's perspective, but also that researcher too. And as you said, I don't have a specialty in health communication, but I have like a certificate in social markets. Social elements that will help people improve their health.
That's right.
Because we know that behavior, socialization, all of those things influence how people will govern their health.
Absolutely.
And so I think we are so aligned in that because it's about like listening to community, listening to their needs. Like we don't have to go, let me just say this. Like, we're a part of the community.
That's right.
So we're also saying, like, what we need. Because we're not exempt from what happens in the Black community.
That's right.
But we don't need anyone else coming in and saying, you need this. Like, we usually know what we need. We just need the resources and capital people to listen. Like, so that's our charge a lot of times, is really trying to convey that and be advocates for our own communities. Because a lot of times we just don't have those people listening. Like, we know what we need most of the time.
Absolutely.
So, we're here to really try and delve into that and even kind of decode some of the complexities of research and kind of this, ivory tower world that oftentimes can be a bit daunting to try and decipher.
What does it all mean? And like, why do I care?
Right.
Like
my everyday life.
In my everyday life, I think about that all the time, and because I came to academia after being in project management for community organizations, and so that is where I think my heart will always lie, is that sort of advocacy element. So even when I develop research questions and design interventions, it's always coming from, why would the community care about this? Does it feel authentic? Is it relatable? Is it culturally respectful and relevant and sensitive? Does it demonstrate that the researchers or the scientists are aware of who we are as human beings?
Absolutely.
Right? Does it center us as human beings? Is there agency? Right, so I think we do our work with that perspective, as always trying to emphasize the agency of the ones we're doing the research on, rather than sort of, and really trying to combat some of the dehumanization that has happened in the past, right? So we know the stories of really unethical scientific practices with Black people.
Right.
So there is some mistrust and reasonable. I think mistrust and distrust is reasonable when it comes from that perspective, because why would you trust a scientist that looks like the very kind of person that did this to your ancestors, right, or your family members? So you think about Henrietta Lacks, which is still a relevant story.
You like read my mind.
It's still a relevant. And so I have a Black Mamas book club, and we're reading that book about her.
Okay, wait, you didn't tell me about.
I know. It just came to me.
I'm going to get her, but she didn't tell me that. And I'm
asking them to come on the podcast. I think it would be really cool.
Okay,
but we're reading that story, and one of our moms is studying at Johns Hopkins right now. And so they just did like a memorial in Henrietta Lacks, right? But it sounds beautiful now, but that was an incredibly traumatic and awful experience that we're still benefiting from, right?
I was going to say it's relevant because it continues. I mean, it lives with us.
It's
like that's still,
and I know whenever we do like our certificates as researchers on ethical practices, we have to talk about like Tuskegee and others, so I think we're so committed to doing research that matters and that comes from the people.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, what do you want to know, right? And so I always ask like community members, what are some of the pertinent issues right now that you feel are plaguing, your community? And in so many ways, I look at our research as providing possibilities, right?
Oh,
and
I like that.
Right, and sort of this sort of hope frame, because I think we both research really difficult topics.
We do.
And everyone is always like, how can you guys be reading about this and talking about this every single day?
Someone has to do it, right?
Yeah, someone has to do it.
And we love it, and we love it. True.
And I think we frame it in a way that is like, well, if we know more information, we can, offer more, evidence-informed, right, messaging, but also like there's hope to that too, because it's about social and behavioral change. And do we want systems to change? Absolutely. Do we want oppression to end? Absolutely. In the meantime, while we're fighting on one end and policy and advocating for, human rights approach to health, because we don't really have that approach to health in the U.S., but while we're doing all of that, on an individual and community level, I think that's where we also want to provide support. And so, I mean, I'm so grateful that we met and that we were able to connect and align in this way. Yeah. And thanks for the idea for the YouTube channel.
No, I mean, this is a collective, and we got to shout out Dahlia. She's behind the camera. That's our girl. She's like been doing Howard student. So just want to shout her out because she's just really been instrumental in helping us set this element up. But I think it goes back to what we were saying about how we translate this and really partner with community, because a lot of times things like go in a journal or go on the shelf, and the community does not get a chance to benefit from it. Right. And we're not built like that. We really feel like because we're part of the community, we feel like that you all should have a say, like in this. In a lot of our work, so it's really a true partnership, and making sure that whatever we're working on, there's buy-in. Like to me, it doesn't really matter. Like I don't want to waste anyone's time in that. Whenever I finish a project, like it's just going nowhere. I really want to see it through. Where can it be embedded? Where can it be integrated into the community and be useful?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So we'll talk a bit about our research in different episodes. So I want to ask a bit about you as a mom.
Yeah, let's get into the mom talk.
So tell us about you as a mom, and just give us some insight.
I'll give you some insight. So I have 2 children. I have a boy and a girl. I have a 10-year-old son, and I have a 7-year-old daughter, and they keep me on my toes. They both are in a charter school that is language immersed, so they are on the Spanish track. the school offers Spanish, Mandarin, and French. And so they are already growing into this global citizen, which is very important to me because that is the world that is the world we live in,
Absolutely.
right? So my son has a YouTube channel, Langston Land, and my daughter has a jewelry line. She has, and so they're really, I say kidpreneurs, and they I think help me as a mom stay on my toes. So my son is extremely athletic, so I'm running all the time. I think though from the parenting part of it, I probably struggle like many of you in some of the conversations that we have to have with them that might be different from other cultures. And also the social media. Like my son and daughter really, they gravitate toward what's trending, like TikTok and other YouTube channels, right? That seem kid friendly, but some things are just like totally out of bounds. And so trying to manage that, like you said, them just being overstimulated. And I'm okay with this. I think my son will be too. Like, I don't consider it a deficit. Attention, hyperactivity. I don't consider it a deficit. I think that it can be a way, and I think that's something we deal with in our community, right?
The shame.
It's shame. It's taboo. It's you're wondering if you should medicate. Like literally, I had to medicate my son early because I was like, I'm not gonna let him be labeled, right? It helps him focus. I make sure he's not like to the point where he's not lethargic and can't function. It just helps him focus. And I did that a little bit earlier than maybe some parents would have. And some of my other colleagues, both with PhDs, both with Black sons, said that both their kids got medicated later in life, and it started to even go into adulthood. They wish they had done it earlier, but they were listening to other people. And so I think that's a true conversation we might not elaborate on today, but it's one that we struggle with because his dad wasn't always on board. But even literally like the last week, he was like, I did not give him his pill, and I could
see the difference.
I could see that. But he pushed back on that with me, and he was like, no, just based off of what other people were saying, like that's just they always want to medicate our kids,
right.
I get it too, but like I'm a nurse, like I'm just not gonna do that. I'm gonna weigh all the options here and make sure that this is what needs to happen. So
I love this the intersections of your profession, your research, and your motherly instincts with that story of your son, because again, there's so much mistrust with us in the system. Reasonable, justified, right? They have over-medicated our kids. They do over-prescribe. They do all the things. It's there. It's documented.
Agreed.
However, this is my child and my baby right now, right? And so it's a complex decision.
It is.
And we want to be mindful and respectful of how parents are navigating this. But I do think so much our cultural narratives are overemphasized maybe, right? Like the historical trauma, like how much are we managing that, and how much does that seep into our parenting of children today? And are we aware that our historical trauma and the sort of inhumane treatment of our people across the globe, right? Across the world, because we're going to talk about that, right? I have international experience, and so like it's not just America, right? So it's again, this mistrust and these concerns are reasonable. So how do we navigate that as parents, as Black parents with Black children, to say, yes, we know that they love to label our boys as hyperactive and with this sort of deficit mindset. But if my child needs support and he needs medical support, how do I balance that?
And I made sure it was our decision. It wasn't them saying he needed it. It was something I assessed and observed with my professional hat. And trust me, they all know what's going on with the fact that I'm involved.
Yes, I love the mom.
So it wasn't them telling me, I'm telling you, and we're gonna do it, incrementally to make sure he gets what he needs, and he's not. So this isn't about like you, this is about him, and how he can be his best self.
That's right.
In these settings, right? So I want to make that clear that as parents, we have that level of authority too. Like, we don't have to be passive in this world of healthcare. We're a healthcare consumer.
Yes.
We have to, and so there's not really. We are going to do our homework. My cousin's a prime example. She has like this rare kind of autoimmune disease that came on later in life. But like, when she go in there, honey, they know not to play with her.
You cannot. They need some homework. That's right.
And so that's how we have to do with our children. Yeah,
absolutely. And it does feel like extra labor. I mean, I know how I prep before I see it. My kids see their pediatrician, and our pediatrician is a Black woman, right? Like, we're in the DMV. Like, you could find a Black doctor. Right? And so, but it wasn't just that she had to be a Black doctor, right? And so, does she look at my children when she speaks to them, right? Does she engage with them, right? I want them to learn how to have agency at a young age too,
right?
Because there will be a time where mommy will not be at the doctor's with you, and so you need to know how to speak up for yourself and ask questions and let them treat you like a human being, because our system is known to dehumanize us. That legacy of being treated as 3/5 of a person is still very real today. It's so unfortunate, but it is. But the hope is that you have agency, and we can share tools and resources, and as a clinician, as a researcher, strategies that will help our parents and their children to be well informed and confident
for sure
when they're, because
we'll help you guys with that. We'll help you with what to have with you, like checklists, different things. I mean, like, what, not very difficult to follow, like very easy, like, this is what you need to say when you go in and talk about your child's health with a provider. Any provider who does not want you to be involved, like, I would reconsider. Like, if you
let me tell you,
talk to them.
My mother taught me this. Like, my mom changed our doctors, like, because if they didn't treat you right, she was out. And again, like, you don't have to have a PhD or be a nurse.
Absolutely.
You're just your child's mother. You're just your child's father or their caregiver. That's enough.
And literally, that's what I want to go in as. When I'm the consumer, I don't want to have to be the perfect. Like, I'm gonna, of course, filter some of that through my professional. But even like when my dad was sick and he was in the hospital, like, I wanted them to do their job without me having to put up, like, say, I'm the...
just treat me like a human.
Right.
That's it.
Basic human...
Just basic human decency and care and compassion. And so that's what we want to encourage. But sometimes you're going to face... Because the system is what it is. I mean, doctors are literally given like 10 minutes. Right? It's this, again, like I said, we want systems to change. But in the meantime, when you know you have a short amount of time with your child's doctor, how do you interact with them? How do you help them to see your child as one that you would do anything for, right? And so to have that human aspect, and to let your child witness that, because I still vividly remember my mom being our main advocate. Right? And so my kids see that with me, I hope.
I'm sure.
But I also want them to feel confident, because if I need to step out the room, like my oldest is 15 now, he's going to go to the doctor without me, right? Well, or I will stay outside. They won't want me to be inside with them. I was going to say,
there are going to be times, especially when they ask about certain things, that they do ask me to step out.
I've already stepped out, and I felt really good that he knew how to handle himself, right? Because he's not... They have the confidence to speak up. We have these conversations at home. And all these sort of, like, I know we're timid about sex and body parts, and but you can't be, because they need to be able to use that language in any environment.
And the actual term for it.
The actual term.
So we say the actual term. We don't give
penis, vagina.
Yeah, no colloquialisms, not like penis, vagina, and my cousins or people that are in my family, they are just like tickled.
Yes.
The correct time. I was like, but that's what it is.
Listen, my daughter, they're going to kill me, but it's too funny. So she's just learning the terms, and she said to my mom, and then she's like, Mom, my dad has a penis, and my mom has a vagina, and my mom busts out laughing because she's just like, and my husband was right there, and he's, a very handsome, dark-skinned man. He would have turned bright red if he wasn't so dark-skinned. I was like, yes, honey, that's exactly what's happened, right? Yeah. So like they do need to know that, and to not feel ashamed of what's a part of their body. Yeah. And so it's there's fun ways and just regular natural ways to talk about things that we were so ashamed of.
Ashamed to even say that you had any knowledge about.
Yeah.
Right? Even if you were using pocketbook or whatever.
Yeah, pocketbook.
I mean, you was like, ooh.
I don't know when we're going to post this, but I would love to see what people were told their...
Yeah, you guys got to tell us where you were...
Yes, what was the name that they used?
Yeah.
My mom had so many strange names, but the funny thing was that she had the strange names, but then we knew the biological names. Yeah, and so I said, I think that's a good compromise.
Yeah,
right?
I would really love to hear what.
But I definitely want to hear.
Yeah,
it's probably regional too. Like I feel like there might be some in the south that's known. Right. There may be some names that are like Northeast, West Coast, different
all around the world. Yeah. Like so, when you talked about like your international experience, you've lived out of the country. Like I really would love if we could engage people
I'm definitely
across the world,
share,
like parenting across the world.
Yeah,
that would be, maybe one day we'll
bring them in.
Yeah, and maybe one day we'll be in a international.
We'll go to South Africa and do a.
We're gonna plan for that. Yeah. Stay tuned.
Yeah, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
So one other thing, and then I think we'll kind of wrap up and let everyone go. Right now it's kind of it's twofold. So that there's like a trending topic around Diddy, and of course he's a major like cultural kind of person.
He was an icon. Now he's a fallen icon. But I mean,
it's true. And and then also like yesterday was Halloween.
Yes.
And so I think those two things, if we touch on them briefly, because that will be kind of relevant to this podcast.
Sure.
Maybe not another one soon.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to talk about like Halloween first, because I grew up initially. We used to trick or treat and everything, but then over time, like as in our Christian religion, and we were it was like, oh no, that's not a part of like our religious beliefs, and so then the churches start to have like Hallelujah nights or have like functions so that you didn't have to go trick or treating. So just kind of, I know you had a story about your son and kind of what he talked about as far as dressing up.
Yes.
So let's hear more about that.
So my son, I'm so glad they come to talk to me. I'm trying to encourage that. But, so he was like, we don't really celebrate Halloween either, but we're a lot more flexible than probably how I grew up in terms of just dressing up. And, right. So he said, what? He said, Mommy, what would be really funny? And I was like, what? Because he has this very like dry humor, right? He's like, I'm gonna dress up as Diddy, and let me tell you, my kid, he knows what I do. He knows the research I do. Like my kids are involved in my life, right? And there's really no separation. There may be shit, but really, they're so aware of what I do, right? And so, they know that mommy does research on sexual violence. And I've been a sexual assault advocate before I was conversations about consent, about respect, like age-appropriate conversations, even to the point of sharing toys. Like, if he doesn't want to share his toy, you can't push him for him to share it. Like, it starts there, right? So they're so aware. So part of it, I feel like he was doing it just to get a response because he enjoys when I start freaking out, like, but he's definitely that kid, right? But then I was like, where is this coming from? Because even for you, this is a lot. And because my first reaction was like,
no.
Yes. But then I calmed down. I was like, where is that coming from? And then he was like, well, a couple of kids at school were just like, oh, it would be so funny if we dress up as Diddy. And I was like, but why would that be funny? He was like, Mommy, I mean, it's Halloween. People go as the worst sort of, people, like, mass murderers or whatever. And I was like, well, that's why as Christians we don't celebrate Halloween, right? That's one thing I thought. But the other part I thought is that there is a fun pop culture element to Halloween. People just dress up as whoever they admire. So that's kind of where I was thinking. I was like, nowadays, especially for kid-appropriate costumes, it's normally something you admire.
Right.
So I don't want you to send this message. Like, I may know you, but it's a no.
Gotcha.
But I wanted them to understand.
Other people interpret.
Yes. I was like, no, you're not dressing up. Like, no. You don't go. Listen, there were so many reasons why he could not do that, right? But the funny thing was just funny, not in ha funny, but funny in a way that just brought curiosity to me, which was like, how is this become mainstream and such a to think and make comfort and make light out of that. That's what I was really concerned about. And so we ended up having a longer conversation where I was like, what he's being accused of right now. And I believe survivors. And then there was a video proof of physical violence. Right. So I was just like, this is not appropriate, right? To associate with him in any way.
And so that gets back to the dehumanization, kind of
desensitized
to,
I think,
like, the seriousness of the things that are being accused, and then what we have seen as evidence of physical violence. So like you said, just kind of trying to make sure our children don't get desensitized, because it is quite easy to do, because people make fun of things.
And I really don't know if they're not going to be desensitized because of the amount of images, right? So we know from like mass media research that is the whole point of this sort of recycling of images, is that we don't take death seriously, we don't take war seriously, we don't. It's just another bomb, or somebody got blown up with a paper. Like, this sort of very desensitized to violence and harm. So I think what the onus on parents is to talk about, there's real people behind these images, right? Because even Diddy's children, I'm super concerned about, right? So like the what they have to see every day. But it opened up a conversation, which we'll probably have in another episode, of just what is the conversation around sexual violence, violence against women, intimate partner violence. What is that conversation among young Black men today? Because my son is 15. He knows how to be respectful. He's been taught those things. We encourage him to share with us when he likes someone, and we're not like strict to the point where he doesn't know. Like, he's had homecoming dance recently, and he took his friend, super cute and all that. So like, he knows that we're open with that, but also how to utilize that openness, right? Because to foster conversation about things that people would maybe a generation ago shy away from.
Right.
But what Diddy has been accused of is so public that really no parent should be trying to shy away from this. So rather than shy away from it, lean into that opportunity and have a tough conversation. The conversation doesn't have to be, it's challenging, but it doesn't have to feel impossible.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of support and listening to your child. So what I ended up doing was just like, tell me why this is funny. And it was like, Mommy, I'm not really thinking that deep about what he did. Like, obviously what he did was horrible. But it's kind of funny because of who he was before. And so he's, he is who he is to the culture. And now he's not. He's like a joke. Like, look at what he's done. Right? And so now I'm hearing a 14, 15-year-old perspective of this very serious issue. Like, that's how he's making sense of the topic. And so it kind of gave me just time to think and just have follow-up conversation. Like, I don't think it's a one and done.
It's not. I was gonna say
so I'll have another conversation with him, 'cause I'm sure to come up
we'll
again.
Share.
We'll share
as we're continuing to try and navigate it. Like, we'll share like how it is we're talking and what comes up from our children. Right? What are they hearing in their circles? We're not in those circles. So unless they bring it back to us and we're able to help them think through it and process it, then we might not always hear what they're talking about in their respective circles. But I think that's, I think the way that you handled it was appropriate. Listening, right? What we do with our community, same things we're doing with parenting. We have to hear our children.
And I would just say, like, I was really listening out to see if there was any justification. Oh, time's gone. Oh, close up. Okay, sorry. All right, so we'll come back to that. But so I think our hope is. What's your hope for the week?
So my hope for the week is that we will have people express their voice by voting.
Okay.
Right. So that's a big deal. I voted this past Sunday.
Nice.
My church is a actual early voting location. And so my hope is that those who want to have a voice will express it through voting, because like you said, not only do we want social behavioral, but we know things like the systems, and usually it's through policy. So just make your voice be heard in whatever way that you feel best suits you and your family, and ultimate your children and their children, et cetera, et cetera. Right?
Absolutely.
So what is your hope?
My hope is in community.
Okay.
Is that the election is coming up, sure, but I really believe in the way that Black people come together and support one another. And so whatever the outcome is, I have hope in our community. Okay, I know that we will always support each other. And we will find a way.
We will come through.
Right? We will come through, like the resilience of our lineage and of who we are as a people. And my hope is that our children see that, because it's really a difficult time, and they're seeing, again, all these images of a lot of really horrible things happening.
Divisiveness.
All the time. And so, but I think if they can observe us as we push through, that they will also learn how to do the same.
I love it. All right, well, thanks for joining us, and we look forward to you coming along this journey and learning more about you as well as we embark on this newfound adventure together, right? So, see you next time, and stay hopeful.
Stay hopeful. That's us from Hope Communication, developing hopeful messages for families. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.